James Miller wiped the sweat from his forehead as he tightened the last bolt on the maintenance panel. The bright lights of Starbase 47 reflected off the polished metal walls around him, making the corridor shine like a mirror. He was the only human working in this section of the massive space station, and the aliens made sure he never forgot it. Still using physical tools, little primate. A tall, blue-skinned alien named Reed walked past, his metallic uniform gleaming. "You know we have automated systems for these simple tasks." James didn't look up. "Sometimes the old ways work best," he said quietly, continuing his work. He knew the automated systems often missed the small details that could lead to bigger problems later, but trying to explain that to Reed would be pointless. The alien laughed, the sound echoing through the corridor. "That's exactly what we'd expect from a species that only reached space travel a century ago. Primitive solutions for a primitive race." More aliens gathered around, drawn by Reed's laughter. James felt his ears grow hot, but he kept his head down and focused on his work. He'd been dealing with this kind of treatment for the 2 years he'd worked on the station. In the grand scheme of things, humans were newcomers to the galactic community. While other species had been traveling between stars for thousands of years, humanity had only recently developed faster-than-light travel. Most aliens saw humans as barely evolved apes who got lucky with their technology. James packed up his tools, trying to ignore the whispers and pointing from the small crowd of aliens. His thick workman's boots made soft, thumping sounds against the metal floor as he walked away. The aliens preferred to float using anti-gravity devices, another thing they mocked humans for not commonly using. Back in his small workshop, James sat down heavily in his chair. The room was cluttered with old spacecraft parts and repair manuals, real paper ones that the aliens found amusing. They didn't understand why anyone would want physical books when all information could be stored digitally. But James loved old technology. There was something special about machines you could touch, feel, and fix with your own hands. His eyes wandered to his prized possession, a battered manual about ancient spacecraft from humanity's first ventures into space. The aliens thought it was garbage, but to him, it was treasure. Miller. His communicator crackled with the voice of his supervisor. "There's a waste management problem in Section 6. Get up there and fix it." "Yes, sir," James replied, knowing they'd given him this job because none of the aliens wanted to deal with it. He grabbed his toolkit again and headed toward the station's upper levels. As he walked through the grand central hall, he saw alien families strolling on the upper walkways, their children pointing and giggling at him. The space station was a marvel of engineering, with sweeping architecture and advanced technology everywhere. But even here, humans were treated like second-class citizens. In Section 6, James found exactly what he expected: a simple problem that the automated systems had overlooked. As he worked to fix it, he thought about his father's words before he took this job. "Sometimes being underestimated is an advantage, son. People who think they're better than you don't pay attention to what you're really doing." James smiled slightly as he finished the repair. The aliens might mock his primitive methods, but he noticed things their automated systems missed. He saw patterns in the old technology that others ignored. Maybe being human wasn't such a disadvantage after all. As he packed up his tools one more time, an alert echoed through the station. Maintenance crew needed at Dock 17. Derelict ship recovered for salvage operations. James's heart beat faster. Old ships were his specialty, even if the aliens didn't know it. Maybe today would be different. Maybe today he'd find something interesting. He had no idea just how right he was. James arrived at Dock 17, his boots clicking against the metal floor. The sight before him made him stop in his tracks. Through the massive viewing window, he saw an old ship floating in space, its hull covered in strange markings. It looked ancient, maybe hundreds of years old, but something about its design seemed oddly familiar. "Miller, since you love getting your hands dirty, you can handle the initial inspection," his supervisor said through the communicator. "The automated systems can't properly scan the interior. Probably just old radiation interference. Understood, sir, James replied, trying to hide his excitement. This was exactly the kind of work he loved. After putting on his spacesuit, James entered the airlock. His heart pounded as he waited for the pressure to equalize. Through his helmet, he could see the old ship getting closer as the docking arm moved him toward its hull. The ship's entrance hatch was covered in dust from countless years drifting in space. James had to use his manual override tool to force it open, another primitive human tool that proved its worth. As he stepped inside, his suit lights revealed a corridor that seemed to stretch endlessly into darkness. Atmosphere readings are safe, but I'll keep my suit on for now, he reported back to the station. Static was his only reply. The ship's hull must be blocking communications. James moved deeper into the vessel, his lights showing signs of an advanced civilization. But it wasn't like the technology the aliens used. These systems looked different, more intuitive to human eyes. In what appeared to be the ship's bridge, James found himself surrounded by control panels covered in dust. As he wiped one clean, his breath caught in his throat. The symbols weren't alien at all. They were human numbers. This can't be right, he whispered to himself. Humans weren't supposed to have ships this advanced hundreds of years ago. A slight gleam caught his eye from behind a loose panel. James reached for it, his training telling him to report it first, but his curiosity won out. Using his tools, he carefully removed the panel. Hidden behind it was a small chamber, and inside lay what looked like a weapon. But it wasn't like any gun James had ever seen. It was sleek, almost organic in its design, with curves that seemed to flow like water frozen in time. Strange lines that looked like circuits ran along its surface, pulsing with a faint blue light when his hand got close. James glanced over his shoulder. No communications meant no one could see what he was doing. Against every regulation he knew, he reached out and picked up the weapon. The moment his hand touched it, the blue lines flared to life. A warm sensation spread up his arm, and for a brief second, he felt connected to something vast and ancient. The weapon hummed softly, almost like it was greeting an old friend. This is human technology, he realized, his voice barely a whisper in his helmet. But that's impossible. When this ship was built, we were still using chemical rockets. The sound of a docking clamp engaging snapped him back to reality. The salvage team would be arriving soon. If they found this weapon, it would disappear into some alien research facility, and he'd never know the truth about its origins. Making a split-second decision, James detached a compartment from his suit's utility belt and carefully placed the weapon inside. The aliens never inspected human maintenance equipment. They considered it too primitive to be of interest. Just as he sealed the panel back in place, his communicator crackled to life. "Miller, report your status." "Ship appears to be an old cargo vessel," James replied, keeping his voice steady. "No signs of valuable technology. Ready for the salvage team." As he made his way back to the airlock, the weapon safely hidden in his suit, James couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just stumbled onto something that would change everything. He just needed time to figure out what it was, and why it seemed to recognize him. Little did he know, his discovery would soon become humanity's greatest hope for respect in the galaxy. Late that night, in his small quarters on the lower level of the space station, James sat at his workbench, staring at the weapon he'd smuggled from the derelict ship. The blue lines still pulsed softly, casting a gentle glow across his tools and old manuals. "What are you?" he whispered, carefully turning the weapon over in his hands. Unlike the harsh, angular designs of alien weapons, this one felt natural to hold, like it was made for human hands. James had covered his door's window and disabled the room's main lights. The aliens rarely came to the human quarters anyway. They complained about the primitive conditions, but he couldn't risk anyone seeing the weapon's glow. As he studied the strange device, he noticed something odd. The blue lines seemed to pulse in time with his heartbeat. When he got excited, they glowed brighter. When he calmed down, they dimmed. "It's responding to me," he realized. Carefully, he focused his thoughts on the weapon, wondering if the blue lines suddenly flared brightly, and James felt that same warm connection he'd experienced on the ship. Images flooded his mind. Stars, distant worlds, massive ships that looked both ancient and incredibly advanced. But these weren't alien ships. The designs were different, more elegant, more human. A soft knock at his door made him jump. James quickly covered the weapon with an old cloth. "Come in," he called, trying to sound casual. The door slid open to reveal Tom, one of the few other humans on the station. "Brought you some real coffee," Tom said, holding up 2 steaming cups. "Heard you had a rough day with that salvage operation." James accepted the cup gratefully, making sure his body blocked the workbench. "Thanks." "Yeah, just an old ship, nothing special." Tom sat down on the room's only other chair. "You sure? I heard some of the aliens talking. They seemed pretty interested in the fact their scanners couldn't read it properly." "Probably just old radiation damage," James replied, repeating what he'd told his supervisor. But as he sipped his coffee, his mind raced. The aliens' advanced scanners couldn't read the ship, just like they couldn't read the weapon he'd found. After Tom left, James returned to studying the weapon. He tried something new, focusing his thoughts on how it worked. Suddenly, text appeared in the air above it. Not alien symbols, but English words. "Neural interface active. Welcome, human user." James almost dropped the weapon in shock. He'd heard of alien neural interfaces before, but they never worked with humans. Our brains were supposedly too primitive to handle them. But this interface felt different. It didn't try to force information into his mind like alien tech. Instead, it felt like remembering something he'd always known but had somehow forgotten. Through the neural link, James learned the truth. The weapon wasn't just a gun, it was a key to humanity's forgotten past. Long ago, humans had reached the stars, built amazing technologies, and explored the galaxy. But something had happened, something that made us start over. As the night grew late, James discovered more. The weapon could change its shape, adapt to different situations, and do things that even modern alien technology couldn't match. And it only worked for humans. "This is why the alien scanners couldn't read it," he muttered, finally understanding. "It's not that the technology is primitive, it's more advanced than anything they have. It just works differently." James stayed up all night, learning more about the weapon and humanity's past. Every discovery filled him with a mix of pride and anger. The aliens had been wrong about humans. They weren't primitive at all. They were the descendants of a civilization that had once ruled the stars. As the station's artificial dawn began to brighten, James carefully hid the weapon in a special compartment he built under his workbench. Soon, he'd have to go back to being the simple human maintenance worker everyone mocked. But now he knew the truth, and somehow he knew that truth would soon change everything. James was in the middle of his morning maintenance rounds when the station's lights suddenly turned red. A blaring alarm echoed through every corridor, making his heart jump. "Warning. Unknown vessels approaching. All personnel to emergency stations." Through a nearby window, James saw 5 black ships appearing out of nowhere. They were combat vessels, their hulls covered in spikes and weapons. Space pirates, the terror of peaceful stations like this one. "All defense systems offline," a panicked voice announced over the station's speakers. "Main weapons not responding. Security forces to combat positions." James watched as the station's alien security teams rushed past him, carrying their energy rifles. Nobody paid attention to the human maintenance worker standing in the corner. He could feel the weight of the ancient weapon, hidden in a compartment of his tool belt. He'd started carrying it everywhere, not trusting to leave it in his quarters. "Attention, Starbase 47. A rough voice boomed through all communication channels. "This is Captain Black of the Stellar Raiders. Your defense systems are down, thanks to our inside help. Surrender now, or we space everyone on board." The station shook as the pirates fired warning shots. James saw Reed, the blue-skinned alien who always mocked him, running past with other station officials. Their faces showed pure fear. "How did they disable our defenses?" Reed shouted. "These are just pirates. Our technology is superior." Another explosion rocked the station. James grabbed a wall rail to stay standing. Through the chaos, he noticed something strange. The pirates' jamming technology was affecting all the alien systems, but his simple human tools still worked perfectly. Just like the ancient weapon, he realized. The pirates were using technology that targeted the aliens' advanced systems, but older, simpler technology. And the ancient human weapon worked on completely different principles. James heard screaming from the main hall. The pirates had breached the station's outer doors. The security forces were trying to fight back, but their weapons weren't working properly. The pirates had somehow disrupted their power systems. All citizens remained calm. The station's AI announced, its voice glitching. Security protocols. Error. Systems failing. James watched as families ran for shelter, as alien security forces fell back in confusion. The pirates were advancing through the station-level eye level. Soon, they would reach the civilian areas. He felt the ancient weapon pulse against his side, its blue lines glowing brighter through his toolkit. It seemed to sense the danger, to want to help. But James hesitated. If he revealed the weapon, everyone would know he'd stolen it from the derelict ship. He'd be arrested, if they survived the pirates. Another explosion rocked the station. Through the smoke, James saw pirates entering the main hall. They were a mix of different alien species, all wearing black armor covered in twisted spikes. Their leader, presumably Captain Black, stood nearly 8 feet tall. "Last chance to surrender," Captain Black's voice boomed. "Our systems have disabled all your weapons. You have no defense left." The station's commander, a tall alien with silvery skin, stepped forward. "This station is under Galactic Council protection. Leave now, or..." A blast from the pirates knocked him backward. The commander's own weapon refused to fire, its power systems dead. James stood in his corner, watching it all unfold. The pirates were right. The station's advanced weapons were useless. But they didn't know about his weapon. The ancient human weapon that worked on principles the pirates couldn't block. He looked at the scared faces around him. Aliens who had mocked him. Yes, but also families, children, innocent people. The weapon pulsed again, stronger this time. James took a deep breath. He'd spent every night learning about the weapon's capabilities through its neural interface. He knew what it could do. Now he just had to find the courage to reveal it. Sometimes, he thought, the primitive solution is the right one. James gripped the ancient weapon tightly as chaos erupted around him. But instead of jumping into the fight, he ducked into a maintenance tunnel. He needed a moment to think, to understand what he was about to do. The weapon pulsed strongly now, its blue lines glowing brighter than ever. As he held it, the neural interface activated automatically, flooding his mind with new information. "It's not just a weapon," he whispered, his eyes widening as understanding finally hit him. "It's a key to everything we forgot." Through the interface, he saw images of humanity's past. Not the primitive civilization the aliens mocked, but something far greater. Humans had once built ships that could fold space itself. They had created technologies that worked with human consciousness in ways the aliens had never imagined. The weapon in his hands was actually a neural interface tool designed to work with human brainwaves. It could become whatever its user needed: weapon, shield, or tool. The blue lines weren't just decoration. They were channels for human neural energy. That's why the aliens could never use it, James realized. It wasn't built for their kind of technology. It was built for human minds. A scream from above reminded him of the current crisis. Through gaps in the maintenance tunnel ceiling, he could see pirates rounding up station personnel. Their jamming technology had rendered all alien weapons useless, but this ancient human device still worked perfectly. More images flowed through the neural link. He saw how humanity had once protected the galaxy, not as conquerors, but as guardians. The weapon he held was one of many tools they had created, designed to work in harmony with human consciousness. But something happened, he muttered, seeing flashes of a great disaster. We lost everything. Had to start over. That's why we forgot. The station shook again as another explosion rocked it. James heard Captain Black's voice booming through the corridors. Bring all station officials to the main hall. Anyone who resists will be spaced. James looked at the weapon, understanding now why it had responded to him from the first touch. Humans weren't primitive at all. They just had a different kind of technology, one that worked with their minds and spirits instead of against them. The neural interface showed him how to use it properly. It wasn't about pulling triggers or pressing buttons. The weapon was an extension of human will, responding to thoughts and intentions. It could change shape, adapt to any situation, create shields, or fire energy blasts that no alien armor could stop. Our ancestors built this, he said softly, watching the blue lines pulse in sync with his heartbeat. They knew that human minds were special, different from alien minds, but not inferior, just different. Through the interface, he learned that humanity's ancient technology had been based on understanding consciousness itself. While aliens built bigger and more complex machines, humans had learned to make technology that worked in harmony with their minds. The pirates' jamming devices wouldn't work against this weapon because it didn't use the same principles as alien technology. It used principles that humanity had forgotten. Until now. James checked his toolkit scanner, one of his primitive tools that still worked. The pirates had gathered everyone in the main hall. They were searching the station for valuables, not knowing that the most valuable artifact ever found was in the hands of a simple maintenance worker. Time to remember who we really are, James said, standing up. The weapon hummed in agreement, its blue lines blazing bright. He wasn't just fighting to save the station anymore. He was fighting to remind the galaxy of something it had forgotten. Humans weren't primitive. They were different, yes, but their differences were their strength. As he prepared to face the pirates, James smiled slightly. The aliens had spent so long mocking humans for not using their kind of technology, they never stopped to wonder if humans might have created something better. They were about to find out. The main hall of Starbase 47 had become a scene of terror. Pirates stood guard over hundreds of kneeling aliens. Station workers, families, and officials all huddled together. Captain Black towered over the station's commander, his black armor covered in pulsing red lines. Your mighty technology isn't so impressive now, is it? Black laughed, kicking aside a disabled alien weapon. All your advanced systems, shut down by our simple jammers. From his hiding spot behind a support pillar, James watched as Reed, the blue-skinned alien who had mocked him so often, tried to speak up. The Galactic Council will. A pirate struck him across the face. The Council isn't here, the pirate growled. No one's coming to save you. James looked down at the ancient weapon in his hands. Its blue lines pulsed steadily, waiting. Through the neural interface, he could feel its power ready to be used. All he had to do was step forward. Found another one, Captain. A pirate pushed Tom, James's fellow maintenance worker, into the hall. He was hiding in the human quarters. Ah yes, the primitives, Captain Black sneered. Almost forgot this station kept a few pet humans around. Doing your master's cleaning, were you? Tom stayed silent, but held his head high. James felt anger rise in his chest. The weapon's blue lines flared brighter, matching his emotions. Search the rest of the human quarters, Black ordered. Maybe they have some ancient trinkets worth selling. Primitives love keeping useless old things. That was it. James stepped out from behind the pillar, the weapon held firmly in his hands. You're right about one thing, he said loudly. We do love old things. The entire hall went silent. Pirates turned to look at him, first with surprise, then with amusement. Even the captured aliens stared in disbelief. Miller, don't be stupid, Reed called out. "Run and hide like a good primitive." Captain Black laughed, the sound echoing through the hall. "Look at this. The little human thinks he's a hero. What's that toy in your hands, primitive? Something you made from spare parts." James felt the weapon's power flowing through him. The neural interface activated fully, connecting his mind with the ancient technology. Blue light began to spread from the weapon up his arms. "Actually," James said calmly, "it's something we forgot." Before anyone could move, James thought of a shield. The weapon responded instantly, creating a dome of blue energy that blocked a pirate's shot. Another thought, and the weapon transformed, extending into a more powerful form. "Impossible," Black shouted. "Our jammers disable all weapons." "Not this one," James said. "This is human technology. Real human technology, from when we ruled the stars." A pirate charged at him. James raised his hand, and the weapon fired a blast of blue energy that sent the attacker flying backward. The shot curved around civilians, hitting only its target, something no alien weapon could do. "Kill him," Black ordered. But as his pirates raised their weapons, James was already moving. The ancient weapon changed forms smoothly, responding to his thoughts. Shield, weapon, tool. It became whatever he needed, moment by moment. Pirates fell back as their shots were blocked or redirected. Their armor, designed to stop alien weapons, offered no protection against the strange blue energy. James moved through the battle like he was in a dream. The neural interface guided his actions, showing him exactly what to do. This was how humanity used to fight, not with brute force, but with technology that worked as a natural extension of themselves. The aliens watched in amazement as this primitive human single-handedly fought off the pirates who had disabled all their advanced technology. The weapon's blue light filled the hall, beautiful and terrible at the same time. Captain Black drew his largest gun. "What are you?" he demanded. James stood tall, the weapon glowing brightly in his hands. "I'm human," he said simply. And it's time everyone remembered what that really means. Captain Black crashed to the floor, his massive form brought down by a final blast of blue energy. The remaining pirates dropped their weapons, raising their hands in surrender. The battle was over, but the real revelations were just beginning. James stood in the center of the main hall, the ancient weapon humming softly in his hands. Around him lay dozens of defeated pirates, while the station's residents stared in stunned silence. The blue glow from the weapon lit up the hall, making everything look almost magical. "Impossible," Reed whispered, stepping forward. "How did you? What is that weapon?" James looked at the alien who had mocked him so many times. "It's not just a weapon," he said. "It's proof of who we really are, who we used to be." The weapon's neural interface activated one last time, but instead of sending information to just James, it projected images into the air for everyone to see. The hall filled with holograms showing Earth's forgotten past. Everyone watched in amazement as images appeared of massive human ships crossing the galaxy, of cities that put the current alien ones to shame, of technology that worked in harmony with human minds. The truth that humanity had forgotten. Thousands of years ago, James explained, the neural interface feeding him the knowledge. Humans didn't just reach the stars. We protected them. We built technology that worked differently from anything else in the galaxy. Technology that worked with our minds, not against them. The station's commander stepped forward, his silver skin reflecting the blue light. But what happened? Why did humans lose all this? More images appeared, showing a great disaster. A massive energy wave that had swept across Earth, wiping away humanity's advanced civilization, forcing them to start over from the beginning. "We forgot everything," James said softly. "Had to rebuild from scratch. But the potential remained. That's why this weapon, this tool, responds to human minds. It remembers what we were meant to be." Tom, who had watched the whole battle, spoke up. "That's why the pirates' jammers didn't affect it. Our ancestors built technology that worked on completely different principles. The hall filled with murmurs as aliens discussed what they were seeing. The same ones who had mocked humans now looked at James with new respect, and maybe a little fear. "We're not primitive," James continued. "We're different. Human minds work differently from alien ones. Our ancestors understood that. They didn't try to copy alien technology. They built something better." He held up the weapon, its blue lines pulsing gently. "This isn't just one tool. It's a key to remembering who we are. There must be more out there, more pieces of our past waiting to be found." The station's commander nodded slowly. "The Galactic Council must be informed. This changes everything we thought we knew about humans." "It changes everything we knew about ourselves, too," James said. He looked around at the other humans on the station. "We're not lesser beings. We're not primitive. We just took a different path." Reed, who had mocked James just that morning, bowed his head. "I was wrong about humans," he admitted. "We all were." As station security forces led the captured pirates away, James felt the weapon pulse one last time. Through the neural interface, he saw glimpses of more human artifacts scattered across the galaxy waiting to be found. Their ancestors had left breadcrumbs, hoping that one day humanity would remember its true nature. "What happens now?" Tom asked, standing beside him. James smiled. "Now we start remembering. And we show the galaxy that there's more than one way to advance. The aliens built bigger machines. We learned to work with our minds. Both paths are valid. Both paths are important." The weapon's blue glow seemed to brighten, as if agreeing. Humanity's story wasn't about becoming like the aliens. It was about rediscovering their own unique path among the stars. As medical teams treated the injured and repair crews began their work, James knew that everything had changed. Humans would never again be seen as primitives on this station or anywhere else. They were finally ready to remember who they truly were.